The neon sign flickered like a dying heartbeat over the Rainwater Diner, casting erratic shadows across the cracked asphalt parking lot. It was just past midnight in the dusty outskirts of Eldridge Hollow, where the highway stretched into oblivion under a sky bruised with storm clouds. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of greasy fries and stale coffee, the kind of place where dreams came to fade and truckers nursed regrets over black mugs. Sarah Klein wiped down the counter for the third time that night, her apron stained with ketchup smears, her dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail that spoke of too many double shifts. At 28, she carried the weight of a life that had veered off course. A high school sweetheart gone wrong, a baby she never held, and bills that piled higher than the empty plates she cleared. But tonight, something felt different, heavier, like the air before a twister. The bell above the door jingled sharply, shattering the quiet hum of the old jukebox playing a faded country tune. In stumbled a girl, no more than 16, her face streaked with tears and dirt, clothes torn at the hem, as if she'd run through briars. She collapsed into a booth, sobbing into her hands, the sound raw and piercing, like a wounded animal cornered. The few late-night patrons, a grizzled farmer and 2 weary salesmen, glanced up but quickly looked away, their forks scraping plates in uneasy rhythm. Sarah's heart clenched. She'd seen that look before. The terror of someone fleeing shadows. "Hey, kid," she said softly, sliding a glass of water across the table. "You okay? What's got you out here alone?" The girl. "Mia," she whispered, voice trembling, choked out fragments. A stepfather's rage, a locked door, a desperate dash into the night. "He said he'd make me pay," she gasped, eyes wide with the kind of fear that clings like fog. Sarah's stomach twisted. Eldridge Hollow wasn't kind to runaways. The sheriff's office turned a blind eye to family matters, and the roads led only to worse fates. She reached for her phone, fingers hovering over the emergency line, but doubt crept in. Last time she'd called, the girl ended up back in the same hell, bruises hidden under long sleeves. Outside, the rumble started low, a distant thunder that grew into a symphony of growling engines. Headlights pierced the darkness like accusatory eyes, sweeping across the diner in a convoy that shook the windows. 7 bikes, sleek and black as midnight oil, pulled into the lot with precision, their riders dismounting in a fluid motion that spoke of brotherhood forged in fire. At the lead was him, Alexander Hale, though the world knew him as Alex Ghost Harlan, the enigmatic billionaire who traded boardrooms for blacktop. His leather jacket, weathered from years of wind-whipped miles, hid tattoos that mapped a life of hidden scars. A jagged line from a wartime betrayal, a faded script promising vengeance unspoken. Beneath the helmet's shadow, his steel-grey eyes scanned the scene, drawn by a gut instinct honed on battlefields long buried. Alex wasn't supposed to be here. He'd ridden out from the city lights hours ago, chasing the solitude of the open road to drown the echoes of a fortune built on ruthless deals. But as the convoy, his chosen family, the Iron Vow Riders, a tight-knit crew of veterans and outcasts, idled their machines, he caught sight of the girl through the window. Something in her huddled form cracked the armor he'd worn since losing his sister to a system that failed her. A forgotten promise surfaced. To her, on her last breath, "I'll protect the lost ones, no matter the cost." He hadn't thought of it in years, buried under layers of wealth and isolation. But tonight it roared back, demanding payment. Pushing through the door, the scent of rain-soaked leather mingled with the diner's fry oil. The patrons froze, whispers rippling like wind through dry grass. Alex's boots thudded against the linoleum, each step deliberate, his presence filling the space like a storm front. He slid into the booth opposite Mia, his voice a low gravel, calm as a loaded gun. "Name's Alex. You're safe now. Tell me what happened." Mia's sobs hitched, her words tumbling out in a rush. Sarah hovered nearby, torn between fear and gratitude, her green eyes meeting his for a fleeting second. A spark in the dim light, unspoken and electric. The stepfather's truck screeched into the lot moments later, headlights blazing like judgment. He burst in, red-faced and bellowing, "That's my girl! Get your hands off her, you freak!" The diner tensed, chairs scraping as the salesman edged away, but Alex didn't flinch. He rose slowly, his frame towering yet restrained, the weight of unseen battles in his stance. "She's not going anywhere with you," he said, words measured, laced with the quiet authority of a man who'd stared down worse than domestic tyrants. The man lunged, fist swinging wild, but Alex sidestepped, grabbing his arm in a grip that twisted just enough to drop him to his knees. No punches thrown, no blood spilled, just unyielding resolve. Sirens wailed in the distance, called by a watchful trucker, but Alex knew the law here was as crooked as the backroads. His crew filtered in behind him, a wall of leather and loyalty, their engines still purring outside like guardians. "We're taking her to a safe place," Alex told the arriving deputy, his tone brooking no argument. "Iron Vow runs clean. You know that." The deputy hesitated, recognizing the club's unblemished rep, built on quiet acts of justice where badges failed. Mia clung to Sarah's side, the waitress's arm a steady anchor. As dawn's first light gilded the horizon, painting the bikes in hues of molten gold, Alex felt the pull of something deeper. The rich women back in the city, heiresses and socialites who'd chased him through galas and private jets, seemed hollow now, their pursuits laced with games he no longer played. But Sarah, with her calloused hands and weary smile, stirred a memory of simplicity, of promises worth keeping. "You coming with us?" he asked her quietly, as the convoy revved to life. She glanced at Mia, then back at him, a flicker of hope breaking through her guarded eyes. "Someone's got to watch out for her," she replied, stepping toward the unknown. The engines roared in unison, a thunderous vow echoing across the flats. 7 riders, 1 fragile soul saved, and a waitress on the cusp of a ride that would test loyalties forged in the heart's quiet fires. Alex gunned his throttle, the wind whipping secrets from his past, leading them into the rising sun, toward redemption or ruin only the road would tell. Word count, 872. The convoy cut through the pre-dawn mist like a blade through silk, engines humming a low, rhythmic hymn that drowned out the fading sirens of Eldridge Hollow. Alex led the pack, his Harley vibrating beneath him with the familiar pulse of freedom, the wind tearing at his jacket as if trying to unravel the knots of his past. Behind him, the 6 Iron Vow brothers rode in tight formation, Ethan Forge Ramirez on his left, a former Marine with hands scarred from bomb defusal. Noah Echo Bennett to the right, whose quiet gaze hid the ghosts of a lost platoon. Mia clung to Sarah's waist on the bike, borrowed from the crew's spare lineup, her small frame pressed against the waitress's back, the girl's breaths steadying with each mile. Sarah's grip on the handlebars was white-knuckled, her ponytail whipping like a flag in surrender, but her eyes, sharp and unyielding, fixed on the tail light of Alex's bike ahead, a beacon in the grey. They'd ridden north for an hour, skirting the edges of forgotten towns where sodium lamps buzzed like trapped fireflies. The air grew cooler, carrying the sharp tang of pine from the encroaching hills, a far cry from the diner's stale warmth. Alex's mind raced faster than the throttle. The promise to his sister echoed in his skull, a vow made in a sterile hospital room years ago when her eyes had dimmed under the weight of a justice system that labeled her troubled instead of broken. He'd built his empire on that regret. Billions in tech ventures masked by the road warrior facade, but tonight, saving Mia felt like the first real payment. Yet doubt gnawed. The stepfather's connections ran deep in these parts, whispers of a crooked judge who owed favors to the wrong crowds. One wrong turn, and the convoy could draw heat they didn't need. As the sun crested the ridge, bathing the world in a wash of amber, Alex signaled a pull-off at an old roadside motel, the Whispering Pines, its sign creaking like arthritic bones, paint peeling to reveal ghosts of better days. The place was a relic, rooms rented by the hour to drifters and secrets, but it was off the grid, loyal to cash and quiet. The bikes growled to a halt in the gravel lot, dust swirling in lazy eddies that caught the light like fleeting memories. Ethan killed his engine first, swinging a leg over and nodding to the motel owner, a wiry woman named Grace Harlan. No relation, but her last name a coincidence that always made Alex pause. She'd patched up the crew more times than he could count, her no-questions-asked policy a silent pact of the road. 2 rooms, Alex said, sliding a wad of bills across the scarred wooden counter inside the office. The air smelled of mildew and instant coffee, a fluorescent bulb flickering overhead like a Morse code warning. Grace pocketed the cash without a word, her eyes flicking to Mia's disheveled form. "Food's on the house if you need it. Kitchen's got eggs and whatever's not expired." Sarah guided Mia to a sagging couch in the corner, the girl's exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. "Rest easy, kid," Sarah murmured, brushing a strand of hair from Mia's forehead. "No one's touching you here." Mia nodded, her eyelids drooping, but trust was a fragile thing, blooming slow in soil scarred by betrayal. Outside, the crew formed a loose perimeter, checking bikes and scanning the horizon. Noah leaned against his chopper, lighting a cigarette with a Zippo that bore the faded emblem of their iron vow patch, a ironclad oath etched in steel. "That deputy's gonna radio ahead," he said to Alex, exhaling smoke that curled like question marks. "Word's out on the girl. We ride blind, we invite trouble." Alex rubbed the stubble on his jaw, the morning chill seeping through his gloves. He'd felt the vibration in his pocket earlier, a burner phone buzzing with a message from the city. "They're asking questions. Stay low." The "they" were the 7 women who'd woven themselves into his life like silken nooses. Heiresses with trust funds deeper than canyons, chasing the thrill of taming the untamable biker billionaire. Victoria Langford, with her diamond chokers and calculated smiles. Olivia Grant, whose private jets shadowed his roots, and the others. A parade of privilege that saw him as a trophy, not a man haunted by oaths. But as Alex glanced through the office window, catching Sarah's profile in the light, her shoulders squared against the world's lean, a quiet strength that mirrored his own buried resolve. The pull of those women felt like dust on the wind. She'd chosen to ride without hesitation, trading her shift for a stranger's safety, her loyalty to Mia a promise unspoken but ironclad. It stirred something in him, a redemption he'd long deferred. The kind that didn't come from boardroom conquests, but from standing firm when the road forked dark. A distant engine rumble shattered the calm. Not bikes, but a sleek SUV, black and gleaming, cresting the hill like a predator scenting blood. Alex's hand instinctively went to the knife at his belt, but he held back, watching as it slowed at the motel's edge. The window rolled down, revealing Jessica Hale. Wait, no, Jessica Thorne, one of the 7, her blonde hair perfect even in the wilds, eyes scanning the lot with the precision of a hawk. She'd tracked him before, using apps and favors, her affection laced with possession. "Alex!" she called, voice honeyed but edged, stepping out in heels that sank into the gravel. "What is this? Hiding out with strays?" Her gaze swept to Sarah emerging from the office, Mia trailing sleepily behind, and a flicker of disdain crossed her face. The crew tensed, Ethan stepping forward with a hand raised in warning. "Private property, ma'am. Turn around." But Jessica ignored him, closing the distance to Alex, her perfume cloying against the pine-scented air. "You ghosted the gala last night." Everyone's worried. Me, Olivia, the girls. We have connections, you know that. Let us help with whatever this is. Her eyes lingered on Sarah, appraising, dismissing. Alex felt the old anger rise, the cage of their world closing in. Expectations, manipulations, a life of polished surfaces hiding hollow cores. "This isn't your road, Jess," he said, voice low and final. Stepping between her and the women he'd vowed to shield. "Go back to the city. Some promises aren't for sale." She laughed, a brittle sound that echoed off the pines, but hurt flashed in her eyes. The first crack in the facade. As the SUV peeled away, kicking up stones like accusations, Alex turned to Sarah, who watched the exchange with quiet intensity. "Old ghosts," he explained, the words heavy. She nodded, understanding blooming in her gaze the shared weight of pasts that lingered like exhaust fumes. "We've all got 'em," she replied, her hand brushing Mia's shoulder. "But we're here now. That's what counts." The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the lot as the crew prepped to move again. Whispers of pursuit hung in the air, the rich women's web tightening. But in that moment, under the motel's sagging eaves, Alex felt the stir of a new vow forming. To the lost girl, the steadfast waitress, and the family chosen on blacktop and grit. The engines would roar soon, carrying them deeper into the unknown, where loyalty would be tested against the storm of secrets chasing from behind. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The road unfurled like a ribbon of cracked asphalt under the midday sun. The convoy slicing through the heart of the Whispering Pines foothills, where ancient oaks clawed at the sky like forgotten sentinels. Alex throttled down, the Harley's growl a steady counterpoint to the wind's relentless whisper, carrying scents of wild sage and sun-baked earth that clung to his skin like a second layer of resolve. Sarah rode pillion behind Ethan now, Mia secured on a sidecar rigged by Noah's quick hands. The girl's face turned toward the blurring landscape as if chasing horizons free of chains. The switch had come at Alex's quiet insistence. "Keep her close, but give Sarah some air." A gesture born of the motel's charged exchange, where Jessica's departure had left echoes of intrusion in the gravel. Hours blurred into a rhythm of miles, the crew weaving through backcountry lanes to evade the main arteries where eyes might linger. Alex's burner buzzed again in his pocket, a vibration like a warning shot, but he ignored it, focusing on the taillights ahead. Ethan's brought back a shield against the rear-view uncertainties. His mind replayed the diner's spark, Sarah's eyes meeting his across the booth, green as fresh-cut jade, holding a depth that pierced the billionaire's veneer. The 7 women from his shadowed past, Victoria with her empire of estates, Olivia's calculated charm, Jessica's possessive fire. They chased trophies, not truths. But Sarah, she embodied the promises he'd etched into his soul, the ones that survived boardroom betrayals and battlefield silences. Saving Mia wasn't just redemption. It was a bridge to something real. Fragile as a first light, they crested a rise overlooking the sleepy town of Willow Bend, a cluster of weathered clapboard houses hugging a river that glinted like molten silver below. The air hummed with the distant call of cicadas, a lazy symphony broken only by the convoy's approach. Alex signaled a slowdown, pulling into the shade of a sprawling oak at the edge of a roadside market. A ramshackle affair with stalls of fresh corn and handmade quilts, the kind of place where locals traded stories over lukewarm lemonade. The crew dismounted, stretching limbs stiff from the ride, while Noah bartered for sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, the crinkle of it a small comfort in the heat. Sarah stepped away from the bikes, her boots crunching on fallen leaves as she wandered toward the riverbank, drawn by the water's murmur. Mia trailed her, the girl's steps tentative but lighter, fingers twisting the hem of a borrowed jacket from Grace's stash. You think he'll come after us? Mia asked, voice soft as the rustle of reeds, her eyes scanning the tree line. Sarah knelt by the bank, dipping a hand into the cool flow, letting it ground her. If he does, he won't find us alone, Alex and his boys. They're not the type to back down. But doubt flickered in her chest. Her own past whispered of men who promised safety only to shatter it, leaving scars hidden under diner aprons. Yet Alex's gaze that morning, steady and unyielding, had planted a seed of trust, watered by the road's unforgiving honesty. Back at the bikes, Alex leaned against his machine, wiping sweat from his brow with a forearm tattooed in faded ink, a vow in Latin, fidelis usque ad finem, loyal to the end. Ethan clapped his shoulder, the gesture rough but brotherly. That SUV earlier, Jessica's not the type to quit. The others'll be on her tail, sniffing for drama. Alex nodded, the weight of it settling like dust on his leathers. The women had woven into his life through high society traps, charity balls where Olivia's laughter masked agendas, Victoria's invitations to yachts that sailed into isolation. They'd seen his wealth, his mystique, but not the ghosts, the sister lost to indifference, the war buddy buried under red tape. Chasing him now felt like a game turning predatory, their resources a net closing on his freedom. A shadow fell across the lot, engines purring smoother than the crew's Harleys, two luxury sedans gliding in like wolves in silk, chrome accents flashing under the sun. The doors opened in unison, disgorging 4 of the 7. Olivia Grant at the forefront, her auburn hair tied in a flawless chignon, flanked by Abigail Abby Sinclair in designer riding gear that mocked the road's grit, and twins Chloe and Amelia Voss, their identical poise a mirror of entitlement. They moved with the grace of those unaccustomed to gravel, eyes locking on Alex like spotlights on a stage. "Darling," Olivia called, her voice a velvet command, closing the distance with heels that defied the terrain. "This little adventure, it's charming but reckless. We've got lawyers, connections, let us handle the girl." Alex straightened, his stance a barrier of quiet steel, the market's vendors pausing in their haggling to watch the unfolding drama. Sarah emerged from the river path then, Mia at her side, catching the scene with a wary glance. The women's gazes swept over her, appraising, dismissive, as if she were a smudge on their perfect canvas. Abby stepped forward, her smile sharp as cut glass. "And who's this? Your latest pit stop?" The words hung, laced with the poison of exclusion, but Alex's voice cut through, low and edged with finality. "She's family now, same as the girl. Back off, all of you." Tension coiled like a spring, the crew shifting subtly, Noah's hand on his handlebars, Ethan's bulk a silent threat. Olivia's eyes narrowed, hurt mingling with calculation. "We're trying to help, Alex. The world's not kind to strays or waitresses." But her words faltered under his stare, the unyielding honor in it a force they'd never truly grasped. Chloe whispered something to Amelia, a phone already in hand. Dialing unseen allies, but Alex raised a palm. "Promises aren't commodities. Go home. This road's ours." The women hesitated, the air thick with unspoken accusations, before retreating to their cars, engines whispering away in defeat. Dust settled slowly, the cicadas resuming their chorus as if nothing had passed. Sarah approached Alex, her expression a mix of relief and quiet fire. "They don't get it, do they? What you're really riding for?" He met her eyes, the connection deepening like roots in fertile soil. "Most don't, but you might." Mia watched them, a small smile breaking through, the first bloom of safety in days. As the sun dipped toward the hills, painting the river in strokes of fire, the crew mounted up once more. Whispers of pursuit lingered, the stepfather's shadows, the women's web, but in the shared silence, bonds forged stronger. Alex gunned his engine, leading them onward, the road ahead a canvas for vows yet to be tested, where loyalty would clash with legacy, and redemption rode shotgun in the form of a waitress's unbreaking gaze. The convoy pushed deeper into the twilight-veiled canyons, where the road twisted like veins through rust-red cliffs that loomed like silent judges under a sky streaked with fading crimson. Alex's Harley led the charge, its engine a guttural roar that echoed off the stone walls, carrying the faint metallic tang of cooling rock and the sharper bite of impending rain. The air grew thick, humid, with the promise of a storm, droplets beginning to speckle his visor like scattered doubts. Behind him, Sarah rode with Noah now, her posture easing into the rhythm of the bike, hands steady on his waist as the wind tugged at her jacket. Mia, bundled in the sidecar, watched the world blur by with wide-eyed wonder, the terror of Eldridge Hollow fading like a bad dream under the convoy's protective thunder. They'd left Willow Bend in a hurry after the women's retreat, the market's lemonade-sweet air turning sour with the scent of confrontation. Alex's burner had buzzed incessantly since, messages from Victoria's circle, laced with veiled threats of exposure, their resources probing like fingers into his shadowed life. But he silenced it, focusing on the horizon where the sun dipped low, casting elongated shadows that danced like warnings. The Iron Vow crew rode tight, Ethan scouting ahead on his scout bike, his radio crackling with terse updates. Clear paths, no tails yet Alex felt the noose tightening. The stepfather's rage wouldn't dissipate in dust clouds. Whispers from Grace at the motel spoke of a man with ties to local enforcers, the kind who bought silence with blood money, turning justice into a puppet show. As night cloaked the canyons in inky velvet, pierced only by the convoy's headlights slicing through the gloom, Alex signaled a descent into a hidden hollow. A forgotten rest stop carved into the rock face, overgrown with thorny mesquite that scratched at tires like accusatory claws. The bikes growled to a stop in a circle of gravel, engines ticking down to silence, broken by the patter of rain on leaves. Flashlights bloomed like fireflies, illuminating a weathered picnic shelter where the crew gathered, pulling tarps over their machines against the downpour. The air hummed with the ozone bite of storm, mingling with the earthy musk of wet soil, a sensory veil that hid them from prying eyes. Sarah dismounted, shaking rain from her hair, strands clinging to her face like dark rivers. She helped Mia from the sidecar, the girl's small hand cold in hers, but her grip firm, a silent oath of solidarity. "This place feels like the end of the world," Mia said, voice barely above the rain's murmur, eyes reflecting the flashlight beams as she huddled under the shelter's sagging roof. Sarah squeezed her shoulder, the gesture warm against the chill. "Or the start of something better. We've got guardians now." Across the circle, Alex caught her words, his grey eyes meeting hers through the drizzle, a current passing unspoken, the pull of shared burdens, the quiet forge of trust amid chaos. Ethan stoked a small fire in a metal drum, flames crackling to life with pops of sap, casting flickering gold on the crew's faces etched with road-worn lines. Noah passed around thermos coffee, steam rising like ghosts in the damp air, while the others checked perimeter with low murmurs. Alex knelt by the fire, warming his hands, the heat seeping through gloves, scarred from years of throttle grips. His mind wandered to the promise that bound him, his sister's last whisper in that dim-lit room. "Don't let them win, Alex. Fight for the ones who can't." Mia's story mirrored hers, a girl crushed under family that poisoned instead of protected. Saving her wasn't charity. It was absolution, a thread pulling him towards Sarah, whose unadorned strength echoed the loyalty he'd lost in war's aftermath. A low rumble pierced the rain, not thunder, but engines, multiple and refined, echoing from the canyon rim like hounds on the scent. Alex rose, signaling the crew to douse the fire, shadows swallowing them as 3 SUVs crested the edge, beams sweeping the hollow like searchlights in a prison yard. The vehicles halted, doors slamming with authoritative thuds, disgorging the remaining trio of the 7, Victoria Langford, her silver blonde hair slicked by rain into a warrior's helm. Natalie Reed, poised in a trench coat that defied the mud, and Madison Hale, coincidence of names again, her eyes sharp as daggers under the storm. They approached with umbrellas blooming like dark flowers, heels trading gravel for purpose, flanked by 2 private security types in crisp suits, radios hissing static. "Alex, enough of this melodrama," Victoria called, her voice cutting through the downpour like a blade, stepping into the flashlight's edge. Rain beaded on her coat, jewels glinting like accusations. "We've tracked your little rebellion. The girl's stepfather? He's got pull, judges, deputies. But we have more. Come back with us. Let the professionals handle it." Her gaze slid to Sarah and Mia, huddled by the shelter, a flicker of contempt in the curl of her lip. "This detour isn't you. You're better than playing hero to strays." The crew bristled, Ethan stepping forward with fists clenched, but Alex raised a hand, his presence a calm anchor in the tempest. Rain streamed down his face, mixing with the fire's dying embers as he faced them. "Better? You mean the cages you build with your connections, the ones that trap instead of free?" His words hung heavy, laced with the gravel of truths long buried. The security men shifted, hands hovering near holsters, but the iron vow's silent wall held, loyalty a tangible force. Sarah moved to Alex's side then, her chin lifted, rain soaking her through but her stance unbowed. "He's right. This isn't a game. It's about keeping a promise." Victoria's eyes widened fractionally, surprise cracking her composure, while Natalie whispered urgently into a phone. Madison stepped closer, her voice softer, almost pleading. "We care, Alex. The board's asking questions about your absences. This could ruin everything you've built." But ruin? To him, it was the empire of empty victories, contrasted by the raw honor of this rain-lashed stand. Alex's voice dropped, final as a gavel. "What I've built is right here, vows that don't bend to wealth or whims. Leave, or we'll make you." Tension thrummed like the storm's heartbeat, lightning forking the sky to illuminate the standoff. The women exchanged glances, calculation warring with frustration before retreating under the deluge, SUVs churning mud as they climbed away. The security men's radios crackled with orders to stand down, the threat evaporating into the night. As the taillights faded, the hollow exhaled, rain easing to a whisper. Mia exhaled shakily, clinging to Sarah while the crew murmured approvals, bonds tightening like knots in a lifeline. Alex turned to Sarah, water dripping from his brow, the fire's last glow warming the space between them. "They won't stop easy," he said, voice low, vulnerability threading through the steel. She nodded, her hand brushing his arm, a spark in the wet dark. "Neither will we. For her. For us." In that moment, amid the canyon's echoing silence, the promise deepened, a family chosen in storm and shadow, redemption riding on the edge of pursuit. If this story's gripping your heart, hit that like button to show your support. The storm's remnants clung to the canyon like a shroud, the air heavy with the scent of wet stone and smoldering embers from the doused fire. Alex stood at the edge of the hollow, rain-slicked jacket dripping steadily onto the gravel, his gaze fixed on the vanishing taillights of the SUVs as they clawed their way up the slick incline. The thunder had rolled away, leaving a profound silence broken only by the drip-drip of water from overhanging branches and the soft whimpers of the wind through the mesquite. His crew lingered in the shadows of the picnic shelter, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of a single flashlight, eyes reflecting the wary resolve of men who'd faced worse than polished predators in trench coats. Ethan wiped mud from his boots with a rag, his scarred hands methodical, while Noah checked the sidecar straps around Mia, ensuring the girl was secure against the night's chill. Sarah approached from the shelter, her boots squelching in the puddles, carrying a thermos of cooling coffee that she pressed into Alex's gloved hand. The warmth seeped through the metal, a small anchor in the aftermath. "They're pulling out all the stops," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her frame from the cold. Rain had plastered her dark hair to her neck, but her green eyes held a fire that cut through the gloom, mirroring the quiet defiance he'd seen in her at the diner. Mia huddled nearby, wrapped in a spare blanket from the bikes, her small face pale but composed, the ordeal forging something resilient in her gaze. "Will they bring the cops, or worse?" the girl asked. Her words fragile as the first post-storm light filtering through the clouds. Alex took a sip of the coffee, the bitter edge grounding him, before handing it back. "The women, they've got influence, not authority, but the stepfather, he's the real shadow." He glanced at his burner phone, screen cracked from the ride, showing missed calls from unknown numbers. Likely the web of connections Victoria and the others had spun, probing his empire for leverage. The Iron Vow wasn't just a club. It was a fortress built on oaths, sworn in foxholes and back-alley pacts, a chosen family that had pulled him from the abyss after his sister's death. Saving Mia echoed that vow, a redemption thread weaving through his billionaire facade, but now it tangled with Sarah's presence, her unassuming loyalty, a balm to the hollow pursuits of the city women who'd chased him like prizes in a gilded hunt. The crew gathered closer, voices low as Ethan outlined the next leg, a detour through the old mining trails to the east, where the roads narrowed to ribbons of dirt and forgotten ore carts rusted in the underbrush. "We'll hole up at Blackthorn Camp by dawn," he said, tracing a route on a weathered map spread across a bike seat, the paper curling in the damp. "Grace's cousin runs it, off-grid, no signals." Noah nodded, securing his helmet with a click that echoed like a loaded chamber. "But if the stepfather's men are mobilizing, we need eyes behind us." Alex agreed, the weight of leadership settling like the rain's residue on his shoulders. He'd built his fortune on calculated risks, tech patents that revolutionized shadows into surveillance gold. But this was personal, a moral compass pointing true north amid the corruption he'd long navigated. As they mounted up, engines coughing to life in the misty hush, Sarah climbed onto the bike behind Alex for the first time, her arms wrapping around his waist with a tentative firmness that sent a quiet jolt through him. The contact was practical, born of necessity, but it stirred the embers of something deeper, a promise unspoken, forged in the diner's electric glance and the road's shared silences. Mia rode with Ethan, the sidecar rumbling softly as the convoy pulled out, headlights carving tunnels through the fog-shrouded canyon. The path twisted upward, tires gripping slick inclines where loose shale skittered like fleeing secrets, the air alive with the sharp resin of pine and the underlying rot of damp earth. Alex felt Sarah's breath against his back, steady and warm, a counterpoint to the chill wind that whipped at their faces. Miles bled into the pre-dawn hours, the convoy a serpent of light snaking through the wilderness, evading the main highways where patrols might lurk. Alex's mind raced with fragments, the stepfather's bellow in the diner, laced with the entitlement of unchecked power. The women's final stares, a mix of betrayal and desperation, their worlds of privilege crumbling against the raw edge of his choices. Jessica's honeyed pleas, Olivia's calculated offers. They'd seen him as a conquest, a billionaire rebel to adorn their arms, blind to the scars that drove him to the road. But Sarah understood, her life a tapestry of quiet sacrifices, the lost child she'd buried in her heart, the shifts that paid for dreams deferred. In her hold, he felt the stir of redemption not as isolation, but as connection, a family chosen in the crucible of flight. A sharp crackle from Ethan's radio shattered the rhythm. Tails inbound, 2 trucks, heavy build, closing fast from the south ridge. Alex throttled harder, the Harley surging forward, engine bellowing a challenge into the night. The mining trail narrowed, flanked by sheer drops where the river below roared like a distant accusation, fog rising in ghostly veils. Headlights bloomed in the rear view, aggressive and unyielding. The stepfather's enforcers, no doubt tipped by the women's frustrated intel, their vehicles built for pursuit, tires churning mud into spray. Bullets weren't the threat. These men played dirtier, with bribes and blockades, the kind of justice twisted by backroom deals. The convoy accelerated, bikes leaning into curves with precision born of brotherhood, the wind howling as if urging them on. Sarah's grip tightened, her voice a murmur lost to the roar. "Hold the line." Alex nodded, though she couldn't see, his resolve stealing like the cliffs around them. Noah veered left onto a spur path, a gamble through abandoned shafts where moonlight filtered through cracks in the earth, casting eerie patterns on the rock. The trucks faltered, engines straining against the terrain, but one broke through, ramming Ethan's flank with a metallic screech that sent sparks flying. Mia's scream pierced the chaos, but Ethan held steady, swerving to shield her. Alex signaled a split, half the crew to draw the pursuit, the rest to push Mia and Sarah to safety. "Not without you," Sarah protested as he slowed. But he met her eyes in the headlights' glare, the moment suspended like a film frame. "Get her out. This vow's bigger than one ride." Unheart pounding with the moral weight, abandoning brothers to shadows he'd sworn to face, he peeled off with Noah and Ethan, circling back to confront the lead truck. Tires screamed, gravel flew, the enforcers' faces twisted in headlights. Rough men with the stepfather's coin in their pockets, enforcers of a corrupted order. The standoff erupted in a blur of maneuvers, bikes darting like phantoms. The truck fishtailing as Noah laid down a barrier of kicked stones. No shots fired, no blood, but the tension hummed with ethical fire. Justice not in vengeance, but in unyielding stand. Alex faced the driver through the window, rain mixing with sweat on his brow. "The girl's gone. Call it off, or your boss learns what real promises cost." The man hesitated, radio crackling with orders from afar. Perhaps the stepfather's rage, or the women's influence pulling strings, before the truck reversed, retreating into the fog with a defeated growl. Reuniting at Blackthorn Camp as the sky paled to grey, the crew battered but unbroken. Alex found Sarah by a flickering lantern, Mia asleep in her lap. The camp was a cluster of log cabins nestled in a pine thicket, the air rich with wood smoke and the faint, hopeful scent of dawn. "You kept your word," Sarah said, her hand finding his, the touch a quiet vow of its own. In her eyes, he saw the reflection of his redemption, loyalty triumphing over legacy, a waitress's corner seat becoming the heart of his chosen path. But whispers of greater storms lingered. The road to true safety twisted ahead, where secrets would clash and honor would demand its final price. Word count 872. Dawn's first tentative rays filtered through the pine canopy at Blackthorn Camp, painting the log cabins in soft strokes of gold and shadow, as if the world itself were awakening to a fragile peace. The air carried the crisp bite of morning dew, mingled with the lingering smoke from last night's fire pit, a comforting haze that wrapped around the weary convoy like an old blanket. Alex leaned against the rough-hewn porch rail of the main cabin, his leather jacket slung over one shoulder, the tattoos on his arms catching the light, reminders of battles won and lost, etched in ink that told stories words never could. The crew had scattered to rest, Ethan sharpening a knife by the woodpile, its rhythmic scrape a meditative counterpoint to the birdsong. Noah brewing coffee over a low flame, the rich aroma cutting through the chill. Mia slept soundly inside, her breaths even under a quilt patched from generations of survivors. the terror of her past finally yielding to exhaustion. Sarah emerged from the cabin door, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her dark hair tousled, but her posture straight, carrying the quiet strength that had drawn Alex from the first shadowed glance in the diner. She handed him a steaming mug, their fingers brushing in a moment that lingered like the fog in the valley below. "She's out cold," Sarah said softly, her voice a warm thread in the morning hush. "First real sleep in who knows how long." Alex nodded, sipping the coffee, its bitterness a mirror to the unresolved edges of their flight. The reunion after the canyon chase had been a balm, but the stepfather's shadow loomed larger now. Reports from Grace's network whispering of a warrant twisted by favors, the kind of legal snare that ensnared the innocent while letting predators slip free, and the 7 women. Their pursuit had fractured into frantic calls, a mix of concern and control, their worlds of opulence clashing against the raw honesty of this pine-scented refuge. As the sun climbed, bathing the camp in warmer light, a distant rumble stirred the air, not the growl of Harleys, but the authoritative purr of an official vehicle climbing the winding trail with deliberate slowness. Alex's hand instinctively tightened on his mug, the crew converging silently, a wall of unspoken loyalty forming at the porch's edge. The sheriff's cruiser crested the rise, its star sheriff emblem glinting like false promise, pulling to a halt in a spray of gravel. Out stepped a deputy from Eldridge Hollow, the same one from the diner night, his uniform crisp but his eyes weary, carrying the weight of a system bent by backroom deals. Beside him, unexpectedly, was the stepfather, Harlan Crow, a burly man with a face reddened by hangover and hubris, his flannel shirt rumpled as if he'd driven through the night in a rage-fueled haze. "You've caused quite the stir, Harlan," the deputy said, his tone measured, avoiding Alex's gaze as he adjusted his hat against the sun. "Girl's kin claims kidnapping. Got a judge's order back there. Family matter." Crow stepped forward, his boots thudding heavily, eyes darting to the cabin door where Mia's shadow flickered. "She's mine to handle. You biker trash think you can steal her. I'll bury you all." His words dripped with the entitlement of unchecked power, the kind that thrived in hollows where justice was bartered like cheap whiskey. But Alex didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he set his mug down, his stance calm, the quiet authority of a man who'd faced down far deadlier foes. Sarah moved to his side, her hand finding Mia's emerging form, guiding the girl behind them as the truth unfolded. "Tell them, Mia," Sarah urged gently, her voice steady as the pines around them. The girl stepped forward, small but unbowed, her words tumbling out in a clear stream. The locked rooms, the threats veiled as discipline, the nights she'd hidden from fists that sought to break her spirit. No graphic scars needed. Her eyes told the story, wide with the pain of betrayal by blood. The deputy shifted uncomfortably, the weight of her testimony cracking the facade of procedure. Crow snarled, lunging a step, but Ethan blocked him with a raised arm, the crew's presence a silent thunder. "I've heard enough," the deputy muttered finally, rubbing his neck. The moral compass he'd long ignored, flickering back to life under the convoy's unyielding gaze. "This ain't right. Call off the dogs, Crow, or I'll make sure the real story gets to someone who listens." It wasn't victory by force, but by truth's quiet insistence, the kind of justice that bloomed in overlooked corners. Crow backed away, defeated bluster turning to sputters, climbing into the cruiser as it reversed down the trail, leaving dust devils swirling in its wake. The system had bent, not broken, but for Mia it was freedom. A promise fulfilled in the light of day. With the threat dissipated, the camp exhaled, the crew dispersing to tasks that knit them tighter. Noah rigging a hammock for Mia, Ethan sharing war stories softened for her ears. Alex turned to Sarah, the sun highlighting the faint lines of worry that had etched her face these past days. "It's over," he said, though they both knew roads like theirs never truly ended. The 7 women had faded into silence, their chases revealed as hollow echoes of a life he'd outgrown. Victoria's estates, Olivia's jets, all paling against the simple honor of this moment. What he'd wanted, all along, was the waitress in the corner, her loyalty unadorned, her heart a vow worth riding for. Sarah met his eyes, a smile breaking through like sunlight on water. For her, for all of us. Mia ran up then, hugging Sarah's legs, the trio forming a circle unbroken by past shadows. The iron vow expanded that day, not by oaths sworn in ink, but in the quiet choice of family forged on blacktop and grit. Alex felt the redemption settle, deep as canyon roots. His sister's promise honored, scars mending in the warmth of chosen bonds. As the convoy prepared to ride once more, not in flight, but toward new horizons, the engines hummed a final vow. Loyalty enduring, justice moral and unyielding, redemption a road that led home. Thank you for riding along on this journey of promises and chosen hearts. If this tale of quiet courage moved you, please subscribe for more stories that honor the unbreakable spirit, and hit that bell to never miss the next chapter in Redemption's ride.